Advent. You know, the word itself, Advent, means arriving. It isn't here yet. It's arriving. There's something coming, right? There's something over the horizon. Can't quite see it. Can't know what it is. Something new. But it's the idea, and the way I talk about it is that Advent is always arriving. It's not just a once a year kind of thing. We think about it as these 4 weeks before Christmas, right? We know how the story ends. There's no spoiler alert. But it's these 4 weeks that bring us to that we're always arriving, that bring us, and even though there's the culmination of, technically Advent, the culmination is Christmas Day, Advent, the word means always arriving. So what's always arriving, right? I look at, if you know me, what I'm about to say won't surprise you. I look at Advent a little bit differently. For one reason, if you're a spiritual leader, if you're a minister, if you've ever led Sunday services, how many ways over the years can you talk about Christmas? How many ways can you talk about Easter and Lent and Advent, like all these holidays? There are moments, and I'll let you in on a secret, and maybe there's a couple ministers here, they might agree with me. There comes this moment, it could be just for a second, it could be for 10 minutes, as you're getting into a season where you're like, oh my God, what am I going to talk about this year? Right? And you kind of rifle through your talks and you're like, wait, this is really important to me. You find the space of what's arriving, right? For Advent, you find what is it that's really alive, that's meaningful, that I want to share. And so this year for me, Advent is different, and it is every year. So this year I'm spending my weeks in this space, this journey of these 4 weeks it's kind of going through this place of being in the dark, right? For the Northern Hemisphere, this is the darkest time of the year. So Advent is an invitation to be in the dark, not just physically, but be in the dark. Like what are the places kind of hiding within us that are kind of in the dark and with each other? It's a little messy and chaotic out in the world, yeah? Yeah, so there's some dark spaces out there. And it's not, Advent isn't, of course we want to get to the light. It's much more comfortable, right? Who the heck wants to, I get it that the world is kind of messy out there and there's suffering, but I want to be over here, right? I want to move to where the light is. So the week 1 for me, Advent is about the dark, and then it's about the body, right? There's this communal body that we are, it's almost like a communal womb. If Advent is about something is arriving, we know something is, as the story goes, it's the birth of Jesus, so there's this baby that's arriving, there's baby being birthed, but in unity, it's, the Christ is being born. Well, what does that mean here? It's a nice statement to say. It means something really important and special if we understand it. So what's arriving? What's wanting to be birthed in me? Well, there's a communal womb, a collective that we are all together birthing, right? And then the third week for me is being silent. I'm not talking about Charles Fillmore's The Silence. I'm talking about actual, like being quiet, being in the quiet, being in the silent, like practicing it, because you have to slow down, right? There has to be a space for the silent in order to allow that gestation in the communal womb, right? And then week 4 is the waiting. If you've ever carried a child, there's a lot of waiting. And in Advent, it's the last month that Mary, as the story goes, it's the last month of her pregnancy, so there's a waiting. And in our culture, we're not really very good at waiting. I want it now. This is uncomfortable. How do I get over here? Right? I even hear, and I confess I've done it a time or two, what do you mean I have to wait 2 days for Amazon to deliver this? Right? We have a culture of, I want it now. I want it now. And we'll pause and we'll stop. But Advent is much more than just the Christmas story. the traditional Christmas story. It's we can have a tendency to sanitize the story. It's my favorite time of year. Christmas decorations, lights, glittery things. You know, every year at my mom's house, we'll pull out numerous boxes of ornaments that are all at least 50 years old because a whole bunch of kids made them in elementary school. And there's felt and glitter and popsicle sticks and Dixie cups and pick something, cardboard, and they've all been sort of like the Velveteen Rabbit, right? You kind of love away some of the glitter. And my mom is always like, oh, we need to clean some of those out. And we're all like, no, we're keeping them all. We're keeping them all. And there's this moment when we're kind of doing that, and I love the decorating the tree, and I love, putting things on a mantle and hanging, evergreen, and putting lights on the house. And like Ann mentioned, right, go drive around the village at night. The potter's shed is very cool, cooler than I've seen it in a long time. Over here somewhere, Lowell Fillmore is all lit up with white lights. Somewhere over here in the lawn are these blue ice things that are moving. So go drive around at night. Notice the lights, be with the lights. And it's okay to be in the dark, right? There is a darkness that the only way we can see, the sky has to get dark before you can see the lights. It's the dark that makes the lights visible. So it's not an either or. But there's a discomfort around darkness. There's a discomfort around, I don't want to look at the suffering. I don't want to look at poverty. I don't want to look at, there's too much, right? Anybody else have an experience of too much? I want to go to decorating the tree. Me too, and I will. So it's not an either or, it's a both. That's the communal womb, right? Everything is welcome at this Advent altar. All my joys, all my sufferings, individually, collectively. It makes Advent one of the toughest times of the year spiritually, because what we're really being called into, what we're really being invited into, is the dark, is engaging individual body, communal body, being silent, and then waiting. So it can be a tough practice. But today I going to talk about love, and probably not in the usual sense, if you haven't figured that out yet. But love in the sense that it's Charles Fillmore defines it as the great harmonizer. But again, what does that mean? Like, I can use it as a cognitive idea, but what does that look like played out in my life? What does that look like when I really engage it and I be with you in your discomfort and I be with you when you're most annoying, right? How do I harmonize that? Anyone have someone annoying in their life? How do I harmonize that? If you don't, I can give you one of mine. This is the time of year, right? I was watching a show. Oh, I know, it was that movie, Love Actually. Right? If you haven't seen it, it's a Christmas movie, and it's one of those you have to watch every year. But in the middle of it, someone uses a line, if you don't tell the truth at Christmas time, when do you? So that's telling you the truth, that I have people that I struggle with. So if love is a great harmonizer, what does that look like? What does that mean? Well, it's not, and as you heard Ann say, it's a noun and a verb, and I'm talking about it as a verb. Think about liking people. Sometimes that's a little harder, to like people. So is it any wonder that at the darkest time of the year here in the Northern Hemisphere, and looking out at this chaotic, messy world around us, and some of us have some chaos and messy going on inside, it's the time of year when lots of people choose to leave the planet. That's a lot of grief. And we're already toting around grief and uncertainty and unknowing and anxiety and depression, right? I'm not trying to sound downer. It's just being with what is and being in the dark with it so that I can be silent with it, so that I can wait, right? And being in that, and as we wait, the light shows. So is it any wonder that we want to go to light? Listen to the words that we have to describe it. Luminous, blazing, glowing, illuminating, radiant, sparkling, twinkling, brilliant, awakening, enlightened. I like the blazing. Right? What about blazing love? Right? What about sparkling, radiant, illuminating, twinkling love? What does that look like? For me, I put it in the context of being love comes alive, that illuminating, radiant, sparkling practice comes alive in the hardest moments. And in my hardest moments, in my most challenging moments, with an individual, with a whole group, whether it's a spiritual community, it's a family, it's a club I belong to, it's just a busyness in a store, it comes alive when I am silent, when I pause, when I rest. That's what the season of Advent is to pause, to sit, to wonder. It's a contemplative time of year, right? Because there's something always arriving. But I sit and I be still and I rest in it. And what I find is that when I be still and I be quiet, right, and I wait, the dark shows the light. Thomas Merton is he's deceased but famous Christian mystic. He was a Trappist monk. He said, "Be still, be still, listen to the stones of the wall. Be silent, they try to speak your name. Listen to the living walls. Who are you? Whose silence are you?" Let me read that again for you. Be still, listen to the stones of the wall, be silent, then try to speak your name. Oh, wait, let me say that again. Be still, listen to the stones of the wall, be silent, they try to speak your name. Listen to the living walls. Who are you? Whose silence are you? First time I read that, I thought, what? Whose silence am I? I don't even know if I know what that means. So I sit with it. And I wait. And what I learned was when he says, listen to the stones of the wall, the living walls, right? The living walls are those walls between us, right? There's those spaces. They could be concrete walls or just a giant space, but the living walls are the spaces between us. And he's inviting us to listen to those walls. In order to listen to those walls, I have to be quiet. I have to contemplate. I have to wait. And it's not always our favorite thing to do, to wait, right? I got to get stuff done. Apparently that was my iPad telling me I have something to get done. It just beeped at me. I thought I had it on silent. So listening to those living walls. And what I discovered was those living walls, those spaces and walls between us, if I be still and I listen, that is the act of love. That is the act of love. And likely, I'm not going to enjoy the wall that's between us, right? It's uncomfortable, there's some tension, but one of us has to be right. You know, there's usually an either-or kind of thinking, not always, but when it is uncomfortable, I wait some more. The discomfort is another way to say the dark. I wait in the dark. That's the act of love. So when he says, whose silence are you? Meaning, am I waiting? Am I listening to you? Am I listening to the walls? Am I listening to what's most difficult for you? Am I listening to your challenge? Am I listening to your challenge with me? And just listening. And then I become your silence. So when he says, whose silence are you? I become your silence by being still, by being quiet and listening to that wall. That is an act of love. That is love. right? Taking it from a cognitive harmonizing principle to active application. So love can be messy, right? It can be a little challenging. It can be a practice I have to grow into. The principle itself isn't messy, it's when I apply it. Make sense? One person, I think. But that's the act of love for me. So so the other piece that I'll kind of end with is that while the practice of love, what can get challenging, I have two things about it in the practice of love and what love really means in this lived experience, in this great human, right? We are fully human and fully divine. I don't want to transcend my humanity. My humanity is how you know what love is, right? That's how you know love, when I'm listening to those walls and I'm being your silence and you're being my silence. That's love here, which means I got to be willing to get in the mud and the muck and the messiness. Is that not what Jesus did? Right? So this is these 4 weeks into Advent, this season of contemplation, of being in the dark, embodying this communal womb, being silent and waiting is what's always arriving as we learn to practice the teachings of a man that is celebrated as the culmination of Advent. So, if I'm listening to the walls between us, and I'm wanting to be the silence for you and you for me, guess what? Sometimes I'm not going to make the mark. Sometimes I'm going to fall a little short. Sometimes I'm going to be listening to you and get annoyed or frustrated or not having a sense of being heard, and I'm going to get difficult. And so you know what your job is as my silence? Don't stop loving me. Love me harder. When I'm hard to love me harder. It's a tall order. It's a tall order. But that's, for me, that's what our principles are all about. When I'm hard to love me harder. It's also true for you. Trust me, you will have a moment that I find you hard to love. So I'm going to love you harder. Which means I be quiet and still and listen to the living walls. Listen to what they're calling me. Listening in the silent. I don't mean Charles Fillmore silence. I mean just and just listening. So when I'm hard to love me harder. That's what's always arriving, always unfolding, right? To love you harder means there's more emerging. I'm getting good practice at loving, right? I need more practice. I don't know about you. So we're going to take some of this into meditation. Into the quiet. At some point during meditation, there will be a span of being silent. And what I want you to do is I don't want you to try to go anywhere. I just want you to sit with it. Notice what comes up. Notice how the brain goes. Notice what you feel in your body. Notice what's uncomfortable. Notice how, whatever comes up in the brain, whatever thoughts come up, whatever they are, it's all welcome at the Advent table. All of it is welcome at the Advent table. So if you're comfortable, you can close your outer eyes. For some people, it's a little more comfortable to leave them open or lower their gaze onto a soft gaze. Lower it to something in front of you. Whether you're online or here in person, lower the gaze. For some people, there's more of a sense of groundedness by just having the eyes a little bit open. Let's do a collective act of solidarity, breathing in, feel it fill the body, and then exhale, emptying the body. Move your awareness through the body, from the head, slowly down through the shoulders and the arms, the torso, the hips, the knees down to the feet. And as you scan through your body, notice if there's places of contraction. Notice if there's places of stiffness, maybe a little sore. Just notice. Notice if there are places that feel content, at rest, expanded. And just notice. Don't change anything. And then become aware of emotions. There may be some emotions that have been stirred. Curiosity, sadness, calm, accept that whatever there is, that is where you are starting from. All is welcome at the Advent table. Let your breathing be easy and natural. You do not need to change the rhythm of your breath. Just notice what is alive. Notice what is alive in physical sensations. Notice what is alive with emotions. Notice them with generous and tender attention. And with your next inhale, open to whatever you are experiencing. Open to whatever you're experiencing in life. Whether it feels comfortable or maybe like a challenge. But just experiencing it without fighting. If there's any tension or within, let go of that battle. Breathe quietly and allow it to be. Notice what is uncomfortable, perhaps, in the body, in the mind. What thoughts might I be fighting in my mind? Even the idea that I should be thinking something else. Let that go. Let go of the battle. Breathe quietly and just allow it to be. Notice any struggles in your mind. Notice any living walls that might have emerged this morning. Places we may have been ignoring. We all have living walls of one degree or another. Some might be very small, some may be very big. But listen to those living walls. Whatever they have to say is welcome here, is welcome at our Advent table. Because we are designed to love all of this harder, which means more depth, more clarity, more expansively. To not move away, but move forward. So let's take a moment in the quiet to listen to the living walls. In the quiet, in the silence, in the stillness. And gently, very gently, with openness, allow every experience, whatever its texture, whatever its meaning, allow it to be present. Turn to it with curiosity, with tenderness, and with kindness. Let your body, your heart, and your mind be soft. Breathe quietly. Let yourself be at rest. Enjoy every part of yourself. And invite all of you to this Advent table, to this Advent altar, where we are in the dark, where we embody a communal womb, where we be silent and we wait, knowing that Advent is always arriving. And so it is. Amen.